Greek Mythology. Stars, Seas, and Pearls Introduction. www.zhaoshuyuan.com I am the child of the dangerous and angry Falcus of the sea. What do you want? If you have the ability, don't waste your time. My grandfather is Pontus, who symbolizes the depression of the earth at the bottom of the sea pit. What do you want? Gone. https://www.zhaoshuyuan.com. Explanation 1. Name. You are listening at novel full.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. In my understanding, Ning is a goddess who can act coquettishly, and the deity in charge of Ning is. But I found that many readers don't seem to understand this point. Maybe it's because I'm too dirty and originally wanted to drive a car to make things ambiguous. Chapter 1. Crossing. You are listening at novel full.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Ah. It's so difficult. This damn multiple attempts at reconciliation. A boy with messy hair and a hint of pitch black in his eyes gritted his teeth as he looked at the homework notebook in front of him and said fiercely. His name is Li Yan and he is doing homework on his desk. But as he spoke, his hand kept shaking and he continued to write and draw with his pen in his notebook. But looking at the lifelike, exquisite, and charming image of the goddess on the paper, it seems that it is not as he just cursed, but rather doing homework drawing. Li Yan seemed to be tired. After drinking a sip of water, he picked up a book of Greek myths from the bookshelf and looked at it. He couldn't help roast, this Hephaestus is really poor. That green hat is as tall as 5 floors. Then his face froze again and he couldn't help but curse, saying, damn it, this fire god is not pitiful. He molested Athena in front of the statue, how could Athena tolerate it? The Earth Mother is still pregnant. Cow. I have become my great-grandmother. Hephaestus is so amazing. Is this gene truly worthy of being a descendant of Zeus Dumas? Then suddenly, Li Yan felt like his throat was burned by fire, his brain was in chaos, his hands and feet were weak, and there was a slight blush on his face. Then he fell heavily to the ground. Shocked. In the Anshin Garden community of Luqing District, Jiangshui City, there was a man who indulged in excessive indulgence 7 times a night, leading to sudden death. Here, we remind everyone to exercise restraint and not indulge in this kind of extreme pleasure. Where is this? Who am I? Where am I from? Why am I here? In an endless sea, a goddess with a beautiful face and slender figure. Her skin is as emerald green as seawater, and her hair is the embodiment of seaweed in the deep sea, sometimes emitting sparkling scales. In her belly, one of the 4 little lives she had nurtured was vaguely thinking in her heart. This goddess's name is Keto, a deity symbolizing the danger of the ocean and a reflection of the surging waves of the ocean. And the little life in the belly of sea danger Keto was Li Yan. Yes, he was so happy that after death, a sudden stream of light appeared in the sky and took his soul away. I don't know what went wrong, but he inexplicably became the child in sea danger Kyoto's belly. Li Yan slowly regained consciousness. He opened his nearsighted eyes and wanted to see what was happening, but felt the image of himself as a person with a snake-like body. Li Yan's body was covered with smooth scales, with bright and varied colors, as brilliant as a rainbow. These scales are tightly arranged to protect his body, and his tail is like a small python, strong and agile, with a snake head-like end. But the head is still a human face, with clear facial features and innocent eyes, exuding a cute aura. It has soft tendrils on both sides of its cheeks, like 2 tender green leaves, gently swaying with the flow of amniotic fluid. This is also considered fortunate in misfortune. But Li Yan felt his appearance and his mentality shattered. What kind of ghost is this, snake man? Don't do it. I don't want to become a snake person, I don't want this ghostly appearance. Li Yan screamed loudly in his heart. It seems that Li Yan's heart was disgusted with his body, and his body began to slowly change. The scales on his body slowly disappeared, and his small tail slowly tucked into his body. The tentacles on his cheeks also disappeared. If it weren't for the scales on Li Yan's arm just now, it would have been hard to believe that that monster was Li Yan. He felt the change in his body, with a shocked expression on his face. He had actually transformed back into a human form, but he felt that there was still a scale on his arm, and instinctively wanted the last one to disappear. So the last scale also disappeared. And in that moment, the danger of the sea caused a series of rosy lights to appear around. Puff. It was like blowing a fart at random, and Li Yan was born with 3 of his brothers or sisters. The danger of the sea was that Cato originally intended to throw these 4 children into this sea area as usual, and let them live and die on their own. But out of maternal love, I still glanced at his child. Chapter 2. Dai Meng and Ning Fu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. At the moment of the danger of the sea, she glanced at her 4 children. It didn't matter, she saw that one of her children was not a sea monster, and her face was filled with joy. I don't know what's going on either. As a descendant of the Earth Mother Gaia, she is clearly a deity, and her husband, Furious Furcus, is also a deity. However, the child they gave birth to is a sea monster. When they gave birth to their first child, they still had the mood to give a hint of maternal and paternal love, but many times, she felt disgusted and annoyed because she could only give birth to sea monsters, and many gods were still saying behind her back that the danger of the sea was not good, only worthy of giving birth to lowly sea monsters. As these words spread more and more widely, the dangerous moment of the sea became increasingly irritable towards her children. But today, what did she see today? This is a daemon. The danger of the sea was so great that he couldn't help but scream out, this is daemon. I finally have my own child. Just as the danger of the sea made Toto look excited, rays of rosy light gathered around Li Yan, and then the world gave him the name Zagedalus. But just after giving him the name, around Li Yan, no, the heaven and earth elemental strength of Zagedalus was not enough to support him to become a deity. The face of Hazhidang Cato, who was waiting on the side, was filled with disappointment. After all, she almost had a divine heir, but Daemon was also good. If there was a chance in the future, he could also become a divine. Subsequently, Cato gently picked up Zagdelius and cautiously surrounded him with divine power, fearing that he would suffer any harm. After picking up Zagedalus, Hidang prepared to leave, but hesitated for a moment before casually using divine power to take the 3 children born with Zagedalus and pulling them away together, without the same meticulousness towards Zagedalus. After a while, she arrived at her palace located in the deep sea. This palace is built on a vast coral reef, which is crystal clear and shining, emitting a light blue halo. Zagdelius reluctantly opened his eyes to see what was going on. His eyes were given a name after birth and had some common knowledge about the world. Zagdeli's face showed a strange expression. He came to the world of Chaos, where the father loved his daughter. He roast that Hephaestus, the god of fire, was cuckolded. Unexpectedly, he also came to this world. He carefully looked at his mother's appearance and found that her hair was like seaweed. He began to ponder which deity his mother was. As for Ning Fu or something, he didn't consider it. After all, the strong aura on his mother's body couldn't be fake. Ning Fu is a beautiful and elegant elf, who is the embodiment of nature. They are divided into tree Ningfu, sea Ningfu, etc. according to their place of birth. They have the same appearance and wisdom as gods, but because the world cannot provide so many gods, they are given a charming appearance. Unfortunately, they have not been given the ability to protect themselves. This is also one of the important reasons why Zagdelius guessed that his mother was not Ningfu. Because most of the Ningfu are weak and lack self-protection ability, it is obvious that the goddess holding Zagdalis does not meet this decisive condition. After all, even the most delicate goddess is stronger than Ningfu. Just as Zagdilius was pondering, the door to the palace in front of him opened, and a nun appeared. They were all dressed in pure white crete, with slightly curled light golden hair and a soft aura emanating from their bodies. Crete is a garment often worn by goddesses or nymphs, usually made of wool. They half bowed to the goddess holding Zagdalis and said, "Welcome back, my dear lord, the great danger of the sea. You have the most beautiful appearance in the world." After hearing Ningfu, the attendant, finish speaking, there was a slight smile on her lips as she lifted Zagdalis from her arms and said, "My attendants. Have you seen the child in my arms? From now on, he will be your little master, and he has been named Zagdalis by the world." Upon hearing the dangerous words of the sea, Ningfu, who was serving beside her, had a hint of envy on her face. Apart from the gods, there were no other examples of those who were named by the world. Even with a few exceptions, those Ningfu or Dai Meng gradually became gods. Upon hearing the words of the Ningfu, Zagdalis, who was lifted up by the danger of the sea, pondered for a moment. His mother was the mother of the sea monster, Keto. Legend has it that she and the Fury of the Sea, the two gods, gave birth to the sea monster Clam, who can truly give birth. Just as Zagdilius was sighing, his face froze. In his memory, there seemed to be no precedent for sea monsters to become gods. Although some sea monsters were comparable to gods in combat power, they were not gods after all. "Oh, I suddenly remembered that I am Daemon. It's okay then." Thinking that Zagdilius had fallen asleep again, as expected, babies need to sleep. Look at how soundly Zagdilius slept. Waves slowly unfold, and fate-like waves surround the dangerous moments of the sea. A deity with a fish-shaped head, sharp teeth, and a pair of strong antennae came to the side of Sea Danger Cato, looking at Zagdilius in her arms with an incredulous expression and saying, "Is this our child?" The danger of the sea revealed a hint of a smile on his face and said to him, "That's right, Phorcus, this is our child Zagdilius. This fish-headed man is the father of Zagdilius, furious Phorcus of the sea." Foucault looked at the child in Keto's arms with a shocked and joyful expression, and extended a pair of slightly trembling hands, saying, "Is his name bestowed upon him by the world?" Keto's face showed a rare touch of tenderness as he said, "Yes, his name is bestowed by the world, and he is not a sea monster. He is Dai Meng." Dai Meng is similar to Ningfu, but Ningfu generally refers to women, while Dai Meng is male. All right. All right. All right. We must hold a grand banquet for our child Zagdilius. I want to let the gods all over the world know about the birth of Zagdilius. We will not only give birth to sea monsters that can only destroy the world like those Warcraft, but also give birth to gods. Keto frowned and said, "Gods. That's right, when our child grows up, I will ask my father to grant him some concept of the ocean and make him a deity, so that Zagdilius will become a deity," said Phorcus with a smile on his face. Keto hesitated and asked, "But now Zagdilius is still a baby. If he were given a priesthood, his growth time would be a long, long time. Isn't this good for him?" Upon hearing Keto's words, Phorcus nodded and said, "That's it then. On his 18th birthday, I will ask my father or mother to bestow the priesthood of Zagdilius." "Mother." Keto hesitated for a moment, "But mother is sleeping now. Isn't it not good for us to disturb her like this?" Phorcus approached Keto and carefully caressed Zagdilius's head with his hands covered in thick scales, saying, "It's okay, this is our child. Our first child, of course we should give him the best." After speaking, Foucault's face showed a kind expression, as if caressing the most precious treasure in the world. Chapter 3. Friendship of the Sea Nereus. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, Zagdilius felt something crawling on his body. He woke up from his slumber and saw a monster with a fish head and a human body looking at him. He was about to scream, but he felt the connected aura on his body, so he stopped again. A pair of sky-blue eyes curiously stared at the unknown person in front of him. And Phorcys saw that Zagdelius had awakened and looked at him with a kind expression, saying, "My dear good son Zagdelius, you have awakened. I am your father, the Fury of the Sea Phorcys, one of the most powerful deities in this ocean." After speaking, he cautiously caressed Zagdelius's soft face, making strange noises while caressing. "By the way, should we go see brother Nereus?" Keto said with a motherly radiance on his face, discussing with Phorcys. It is obvious that Keto wants to bring his child to Nereus and show off. Without hesitation, Foucault said, "Of course, this is our only child. We should take him to see his uncle." It is obvious that the masters of the sea monsters, Phorcys and Keto, did not consider them their children. After all, in their view, the sea monster race that could not become gods was not worth their trouble. Only Zagdelius, who can become a deity, is their child. Later, Keto casually gave a command to Ning next to him, saying, "Go take care of these three." These three servants of Zagdelius. Keto pointed to the three sea monsters that he had casually discarded next to him and were born with Zagdelius. "When they grow up, they can act as flesh shields for my children and protect them. After all, the sea monsters' bodies are very strong." Phorcys glanced in the direction pointed by Keto and found that it was three sea monsters. He immediately withdrew his gaze and came to Keto's side, looking at Zagdelius in her arms. After watching Ning take away the three brothers, who were his mother's siblings with Zagdelius, Phorcys asked, "Was this born with Zagdelius? Why aren't they Damon or Ning?" When it comes to Damon, Phorcys' face looks regretful. It seems that he feels regretful that he has not given Zagdelius another brother or sisters. As for why would Foucault say Damon or Ning? That's because they are sea monsters, so Phorcys doesn't even have an interest in learning about them. Otherwise, with his powerful clergy and divine power, how could he not know whether these three are men or women? Keto hesitated for a moment and said, "I feel sorry too. Why are they sea monsters? Alright, we should go now. It's time to take our children to Nereus's brother's place." Nereus is a deity who symbolizes the peaceful side of the ocean. In the eyes of most living beings, he is a kind elder who brings comfort and makes them feel close. Keto and Phorcys held Zagdelius in their arms and came to the front of a palace. This underwater palace seems to be a dreamy underwater world, emitting a friendly and warm atmosphere. It is also located in a colorful coral reef, surrounded by colorful marine creatures, forming a beautiful underwater painting. The appearance of the palace is made of transparent and sturdy crystals, allowing the light inside the palace to gently sprinkle around and illuminate the entire sea area. The top of the palace is adorned with countless sparkling gemstones, resembling stars in the night sky, adding a touch of mystery and romance to this underwater palace. At the moment when Keto and Phorcys arrived, the gate of this palace opened and a kind elder walked out. His hair was gray, his chin was covered in a thick silver beard, and he was dressed in seidin, interwoven with snow white and sky blue. He gently caressed the beard on his chin, with a gentle smile on his face, saying, "Is there anything to do with my dear brother Phorcys and my sister Kertuo coming to my palace?" Keto looked at Nereus with a hint of admiration on his face and said, "My dear brother, this is my child Zagdelius." After speaking, Keto placed Zagdelius in front of Nereus. Nereus took Zagdelius, who was sleeping soundly in his arms, and said, "What a lovely little thing. Is this your child that you finally gave birth to? I will bless him." Then Nereus said, "Dear Zagdelius, I hope you are favored by the sea. You will reap the friendship of the sea and become the beloved child of the entire sea." After speaking, Nereus's face turned pale, and his divine power had also been exhausted. Keto looked at Nereus, whose face was pale, and couldn't help but say, "Nereus brother, are you okay? Thank you for your blessings to our child. Looking for Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com. The blessings or curses of the gods are very precious, whether they are more or less, light or heavy, they all consume the divine power of the gods, and not all gods can issue curses or blessings, at least the original god can do it. Fucus looked at Nereus with a worried expression. The primordial god refers to a deity who has fully mastered a law, or a law that already exists due to the existence of this deity. Nereus shook his head and said, I'm fine. This child is very cute, and it's only natural for me to send my blessings. And Zagdalis, who was in Nereus's arms, felt very comfortable. He felt the water around him like his guardian, gently enveloping him. One less point made him powerless, and one more point made him fierce. So Zagdalis couldn't help but cry out, but in Nereus's ears it was the baby's infant language. Nereus couldn't help but laugh and said, this child is really cute. Even without my blessings, he could have become a deity with his own strength. Upon hearing the voice of holding him change, Zagdalis couldn't help but lift his head and saw an old man full of kindness holding him, his body filled with various friendly atmospheres. I couldn't help but laugh, although Zagdalis didn't know why he laughed. Seeing the soft smile on Zagdalis' face, Nereus kindly said, how lovely. Since I was born, I have never seen such a lovely child before. I hope you bring Zagdalis to my palace more often. I will always welcome your arrival. Keto saw how Zagdalis was so favored by Nereus, and his face also wore a smile. This is her child, he is liked, that is, she is loved. Chapter 4. Gifts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Zagdalis woke up with a dead fish eye open, unsure of what to say for a moment, and then prepared to go to sleep again. Excited. Isn't it exciting to travel through time? No, for Zagdalis, he was initially a bit excited, but after being born, his mood gradually calmed down. And he is still a baby now, unable to do anything he wants to do. Now he only hopes to delete the websites he browsed on his phone or be formatted by kind-hearted people before he dies. He is already dead and doesn't want to die again. Zagdalis thought to himself and fell asleep again. He couldn't stay awake and didn't know what was going on. Perhaps babies are already quite drowsy. In this way, time flies like a white horse through a gap, and the deity who wants to seize time will eventually be devoured by time. The goddess Rhea, who wants time to flow back, is still trapped in the river of time, constantly searching for her husband's figure, hoping to bring back the cruel and lost second-generation god king, Cronus. 10 years have passed like this. That little baby back then has now grown into a teenager. Zagdalis, originally known as the three good citizens of the Blue Star world, has always been able to only abide by the rules and has always been a horse at the mercy of others. But unfortunately, the father and mother in this world have a strong background, which directly transformed this ox and horse into a noble roam. Moreover, on the day he reaches maturity at the age of 18, he will gain some concept from his grandfather and become a deity. It can be said that it is the existence standing at the top of this world. As for relying on oneself. Are you joking? If you can get the family's property in a few years and insist on starting your own business, why not be satisfied now that you have to work hard and start your own business? The Ningfu who takes care of him today is pure and lovely, and the Ningfu who takes care of him tomorrow is enchanting and alluring. If you don't like both, there is also the tree Ningfu. Of course, he can't go too far. After all, he is still in the status of Meng. If he wants to enjoy the pleasure of ecstasy, he must wait until he becomes 18 gods before enjoying it. After all, the gap between gods and daimon is even greater than the gap between humans and microorganisms, a gap between heaven and earth. He cannot enjoy the treatment that only gods can enjoy in advance, even if his parents are strong. Diana, come and give me a grape, Zagdalis' tender voice rang out in a Ningfu's arms. Diana, who was waiting on the side, nodded and said in a very gentle voice when she heard Zagdelius's words, "My dear Zagdelius, okay, I'll peel the grapes for you now." Diana carefully peeled off the outer skin of a large purple grape from a nearby fruit tray and stuffed it into Zagdelius's mouth. In fact, when Zagdelius first heard the name Diana, he was startled. Because this is the name of the moon goddess in Roman mythology. But later he realized that he was overthinking, because Diana was just a nymphu, and she was also the lowest tree nymphu. But with this name, Diana became one of the 3 nymphs who personally served Zagdelius. As for the other 2, one is nymphu Ophelia, who is holding Zagdelius in her arms and making Zagdelius unable to stop. She has a sea-like chest, and the other is nymphu, whose body is as warm and delicate as clouds. These 3 nymphu were all given to him by his mother Keto, who took care of his attendants before he turned 18. "Alas, there are still 8 more years before I can become a deity," said Zagdelius in his voice. When Zagdelius's voice had not completely disappeared, his mother, Sea of Danger, came from outside. For other creatures, the danger of the sea is a symbol of cruelty, but for Zagdelius, she is a gentle and amiable mother. Because as long as it is the request of Zagdelius, Keto will almost always be satisfied, except for being a deity. Keto saw Zagdelius lying in Ophelia's arms and said gently, "My favorite son Zagdelius, you must not have such thoughts. Becoming a god is the only chance for you, Damon. That is to burn everything and obtain a priesthood from the world before you disappear. Although all the priesthood obtained by this method are original, if you fail, you will not even be able to exist in your own body." Cato continued, "And even if you want to obtain the primordial priesthood, let's wait until you become a god. After all, after becoming a god, you have infinite opportunities to try and make mistakes, and you won't lose your life." Zagdelius saw his mother say that at once, with a hint of affection on his face, and said, "Mother, I know, I'm just complaining. After all, both mother and father are gods, and I'm just a substitute, so I feel a bit depressed." Keto gently stroked the blue hair of Zagdelius and said, "Don't worry, your body is too weak now, and you haven't fully developed yet. You don't want to keep this face for a long time after becoming a god, do you?" Zagdelius nodded and said, "Mother, I know. I'm not a fool, I'm just talking. I don't want to grow 1 centimeter in just a few thousand years." Cato breathed a sigh of relief when she saw that Zagdelius had no immediate intention of becoming a god. She didn't want this precious son to die in a little while. That's right. In Cato's opinion, it's just a nap. Why be so anxious? "Oh, by the way, Zagdelius, I came to see you this time just to give you some strength." Keto seemed to have just remembered. "Mother, what gift is it?" Zagdelius had already begun to look forward to it. He shouldn't have been so childish with so much experience in cattle and horses, but it's unclear whether it's because the environment is too comfortable or because of physical reasons. Zagdelius should have taken care of the child and acted coquettishly with his parents without any hesitation. After all, children who can act coquettishly have milk to eat. Keto looked at Zagdelius with a longing expression on his face, without showing any concern. He smiled slightly and said, "Come in." After Keto finished speaking, 3 strange-shaped female demons came in from outside. A person's hair is like seaweed, covered in blue scales, and the long snake tail behind him is constantly swaying, indicating that the owner of this snake tail's heart is not calm. The second one looks similar to the first one, but the scales on its body are red. The third one is different from the first 2. Her scales are colorful and her face is delicate, but her hair is different from the first 2. Her hair is like a venomous snake, and the snake's tail is not as rough and wild as the first 2, but rather has a delicate feeling. Chapter 5 3 Sisters of Gore Gong. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, Cato introduced, Zagdelius, these 3 sea monsters were born with you to protect you. Zagdelius had a question mark on his face. Isn't he Keto's only son? Where did these three come from? And it was also born with him. Keto saw the question mark on Zagdali's face, smiled slightly and said. The red scale is called Euryale, the blue scale is Steno, and the color scale is Medusa. They are also called the three sisters of Gore Gong. You can tell them anything later. Keto then told the three sisters of Gorgon, Zagdiels is the existence that you need to protect with your life in the future. When he becomes a god, you will become the most noble existence under the gods. Steno and Euryale immediately nodded. Medusa, on the other hand, glanced at Zagdelius and hesitated before nodding. Keto said to Zagdelius, they are sea monsters born with you, but the difference is that they don't have as much intelligence as sea monsters. Their intelligence can be compared to the gods, so you don't have to worry about them being like those sea monsters who can only destroy, they will only cause trouble. Medusa. Isn't this a witch? So it's her. Three sisters of Gore Gong. Zagdiel said to the three sisters of Gorgon, hello, my sisters, when I become a god, you will become my closest existence, and you will get my blessing. Euryale's eyes lit up. She had already had enough of being chased by gods and demigods. If there were a temple to protect her, then she could live a good life. So Euryale quickly expressed his loyalty and said, Zagdelius, I will always guard you. As for the words, brothers, she did not say it out loud, after all, Keto did not indicate that they were her daughters. Because throughout the world of Chaos, CTO has always said that she has only one child, and that is Zagdelius. Zagdelius nodded. Upon seeing Euryale, who immediately showed his loyalty, Keto nodded in satisfaction and said, I'm leaving now. I have something else to attend to, Zagdelius. You can go out and explore now. You haven't been out since you were born. A hint of excitement flashed on Zagdelius's face. He had long wanted to go out and play, but without his mother's permission, he could only stay in this palace. So he loudly said, all right, let's go out and have some fun. After saying these words, Zagdelius left the palace where he had lived for 10 years and came to the earth. I saw this lush green grass, vast trees, and flourishing plants one after another, without any visible boundaries. In front of this green patch, there is still a white beach, on which there are a few crabs walking arrogantly towards the ocean. And not far away, there are several humans holding several wooden sticks attempting to catch the fish in this sea. A family of 3 rabbits were happily swimming on the distant land, with 2 larger rabbits protecting the smaller one in the middle, one in front and the other behind. When Medusa, who had just followed Zagdelius to the earth, saw the scene of these 3 rabbits playing, her pale purple eyes revealed a hint of inexplicable envy. She also wants her parents to accompany her, and she also wants their love. But the next second she shook her head and resolutely closed her eyes. No. She doesn't need it. As long as she has sisters, her parents are all flowers in the mirror and moons in the water. But even with her eyes closed, her body still tilted slightly towards the direction of the rabbit's family of 3. Zagdelius, who was walking ahead, seemed to feel something, so he turned his head to see what was going on. Seeing Medusa's face still looking in one direction even though she closed her eyes, Zagdelius also looked in that direction. He saw 3 happy rabbits. He understood. He looked at Gore Gong's 3 sisters with a complicated face. He opened his mouth and closed it again. He wanted to comfort, but in what capacity? The only child of Keto and Phorcus. What are their 3 Gore Gong sisters sworn to protect? Or a stranger we met for the first time? He doesn't know, but when he saw Medusa's appearance, he couldn't help but walk over with his feet. Upon hearing the footsteps, Medusa immediately regained her senses. She reluctantly calmed her emotions and revealed a smile that was even uglier than crying, saying to Zagdelius, Zagdelius, what's up with you? Zagdelius hesitated for a moment, but still couldn't say words of comfort. What qualification does he have to comfort her as a vested interest? Medusa saw the hesitant look on Zagdelius's face and understood. She knew what Zagdelius wanted to say, so she spoke up first and said, I don't need comfort. I am a sea demon, and you are the future god His Highness. We are not siblings on the same path, so you don't have to say these things. When she said these words, there was no emotional overflow on her face, as if she was talking about a trivial matter. Steno and Euryale watched as the snake on Medusa's head kept swaying, and they knew that Medusa was not as easy as she said. Maternal love. Father's love. They have never experienced it before. From birth to now, they have only seen their mother 3 times, once at birth, once for exercising, and this last time for them to protect the future His Highness in front of them. Have they ever been dissatisfied? Perhaps there is, after all, they also want the love of their parents. But they are just lowly sea monsters, they are just monsters that cannot become gods. Like the beasts that ravage the earth, they are just sea monsters and should not be extravagant in seeking love. But why do they still have a hint of unwillingness in their hearts? Zagdeles smiled, came to the 3 sisters of Gorgon and said, Why is it unnecessary? I am a child born with you. We are the closest brothers in the world. We are already children of the same mother. When I become a deity, I will do my best to make you also a deity. I cannot give you the love of your parents, but I can give you the love of your brothers. Are you willing to become my sister? Upon hearing Zagdelius's words, Medusa's indifferent eyes left a dewdrop that ran from her orbit all the way to her cheeks and stopped at the jaw. Medusa couldn't help but touch it. She felt a bit cold. Is this a tear? But why are these tears so cold? I remember the first time I cried, the tears were so hot that my heart seemed to be torn apart, but why was it different this time? Chapter 6. Grey Shell. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Zagdelius looked at Medusa with a slight smile, and his slender fingers began to slowly sway. Then Medusa opened her pale purple eyes and said, Brother Zagdelius, thank you. Zagdelius didn't speak, just looked at him like this. Suddenly, he saw something by the seaside, his eyes fixed. So he said to Medusa, You are the child of a deity, perhaps you can also become a deity, as long as you find that path, because the world will give you a glimmer of vitality. Medusa nodded and made a humming sound. Afterwards, Zagdelius arrived at the pale yellow beach and picked up something resembling a shell from it. No, it's just shells, but the shells are not as beautiful as the rows of shells on the beach. Medusa frowned as she saw Zagdelius pick up this strange and huge shell and said, Brother Zagdelius, how could you pick up such an ugly shell? If you like shells, I can go to the deep sea to find many, many beautiful shells for you. Who knew that Zagdelius only showed a mysterious smile and said, Dear Medusa, I just had an idea. Can you please help me find something similar? Looking at this gray, black, and slippery green moss, she couldn't help frowning and saying, All right, Brother Zagdelius, what's the use of looking for this thing? Although Medusa didn't like it, she still agreed to Zagdelius's request. Zagdelius smiled and said, This thing. This thing, I want to experiment, I want to see if I can create one of the most beautiful treasures in this ocean. Medusa had some doubts about how such an ugly thing could create the most beautiful treasure. But since Zagdelius wanted to do it, she would go help him, find him, and just play around with him. So Medusa headed towards the deep sea to find the black shell that Zagdelius wanted. And the other 2 Gore workers remained by Zagdelius's side. Zagdelius picked up the black shell, condensed it into a small one with divine power, and then gently opened the gap of the shell, embedding the bead condensed by divine power into the flesh and blood. He is the descendant of the dangerous Cato of the sea and the angry Foucault of the sea. Although he has not become a god, he carries some divine power with him. Zagdelius clapped his hands and said, We have achieved our goal. Steno, the eldest sister of Gong's 3 sisters, couldn't help asking, Zagdeals, what's the use of condensing your magic power into such a gadget and then stuffing it into a shell? Zagdelius smiled and said, perhaps, it may not be useful, but it may also be useful. After all, I just want to do an experiment. Upon hearing Zagdelius's words, Steno remained speechless. It seemed that this future deity was still very childish. Unexpectedly interested in these things. But little do they know that inspiration is the source of creativity. Life without inspiration is foolish, and the initial driving force of wisdom is inspiration. And the heart of exploration is the source of inspiration. Not long after, Medusa retrieved a large oval-shaped shell from the sea, with a diameter of about 1 meter. Zagdelius saw this shell, his eyes lit up, and he repeated the same operation, condensing a small bead of divine power. He then lifted the shell and stuffed it into its flesh. Medusa asked curiously, what is this for? Zagdelius smiled and said, I want to create a treasure, even if it fails, after all, this thing is not very useful. Medusa couldn't imagine what kind of treasure this thing could produce, a black shell. Other black things. But no matter how Medusa imagines it, what this black and unadorned shell can conceive. Zagdelius said to Medusa, why don't we go back first? I want to bring these 2 shells back to the palace. Okay, let's go first. This land is also quite dangerous. If a warcraft emerges, we may not be able to protect you, Steno nodded. No, leave this shell on the beach. Let's take the larger one. Zagdelius pointed to the smaller shell on the side. The 3 sisters of Gore Gong nodded. It didn't matter whether they took it with them or not. After all, it was to play with children. Returning to the palace, Zagdelius hurriedly placed the black shell next to the palace, which looked like an ugly rock if not carefully examined. Time passed by little, and Zagdelius injected divine power into this shell every day. I want to see what happens to this. But when he was pleasantly surprised, the beads embedded in the shell had a special reaction with the shell. He absorbed some of his divine power from the book garden www.zhaoshuyuan.com and fused with a special substance inside the shell, wrapping the bead around it. Under the pressure of the deep sea, this bead gradually became round. Accidentally, a year has passed. The shell in front of Zagdelius suddenly shone brightly. A pearl with a faint blue halo and a peaceful aura appeared from the shell and landed in his hand. I don't know if it was a coincidence or an accident, but the shell thrown on the beach where Zagdelius went also gave birth to a pearl. However, the halo carried by the pearl surrounded it like a star, extinguished, flickered, and emitted a mysterious atmosphere. That bead flew to Zagdelius's side. Looking at these 2 beads of vastly different colors, Zagdelius smiled and said, this is called a pearl, and the shell that gives birth to pearls is called a pearl clam. After Zagdelius finished speaking, the priesthood of pearls appeared in the world and integrated into Zagdelius's body. The body of Zagdelius began to grow stronger, and his divine power continued to grow. After a while, Zagdelius became the god of pearls. The world announced the emergence of the pearl god Zagdelius. Medusa, who was waiting on the side, looked shocked and almost couldn't close her chin. She said with a surprised expression, that's it. This black thing has made you a god, Zagdelius. His Highness Zagdelius. You're amazing. It's not unreasonable for my mother to think you're her only child. Even though this black shell. The pearl clam has been around for a long time, only you have obtained the priesthood of the pearl. Medusa looked at Zagdelius with admiration on her face. Chapter 7. Fengshen. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, the Fulcus couple in the deep sea also looked shocked. Cato couldn't help but say to Phorcus, this is the primordial divinity. Oh my goodness, our child has actually obtained the primordial divinity, and he hasn't burned everything of himself yet. How did this happen? Foucault couldn't help but say, our child is really powerful. He is amazing. He has created something that this world doesn't have. And Hades, who was repairing on Mount Olympus, suddenly opened his eyes. This newly emerged clergy was of great help to him, and he felt a sense of longing in his wealth clergy. This is Hades, who has only appeared in the priesthood of gemstones since his birth. Is this a gem-like existence again? Hades couldn't help but think. Subsequently, Zagdelius's mind moved and he retrieved the pearl clam that had been left on the beach. He declared to the world, pearls are treasures nurtured by the ocean and are necessary for the existence of the world. After speaking, Zagdelius took out 2 pearls, and as he became a god, these 2 pearls also became artifacts. Zagdelius named this artifact, Twin Star Pearl. After feeling the power of this artifact, Zagdelius's face was filled with ecstasy and he couldn't help but scream, "This artifact is invincible." This artifact has 3 functions in total, one of which is to emit a peaceful atmosphere, calm down restless creatures, and is also useful to the gods. This first feature is simply a Warcraft artifact. Even if it's just a single function, there will be gods rushing to ask for it. This means being able to walk freely on the earth without being attacked by Warcraft. For weak gods, this is no less than a life-saving artifact. However, compared to the first function, the second function is not satisfactory. This function is for the deity wearing this artifact. No, for creatures, their skin will become delicate, and in simple terms, it will become beautiful. Zagdelius pursed his lips, and this function was of no use to him. He was already handsome enough. It is not an exaggeration to say that his appearance has surpassed 80% of the gods, but if his face were to open, it could be said that he had surpassed 9.99% of the gods. So for him, this function is like chicken ribs, eating it without meat, it's a pity to abandon it. However, he won't promote this function everywhere. After all, the fact that goddesses love beauty is well known, and they can fight fiercely for something useless, at least in the eyes of Zagdelius. And this third function is the most valued function of Zagdelius, which is healing. This artifact can instantly restore a deity's injury at the cost of reducing half of its own strength, without any sequelae. And this artifact can also absorb half of the missing power from the elemental forces of heaven and earth, but it's just a relatively long time. Zagdelius's eyes lit up and he put this artifact into his body. He didn't want to be taken away. Although his mother was famous in the world, what if there were really fools? So it's better to be more secure. After a while, Zagdelius's parents hurriedly arrived, and Keto looked at Zagdelius excitedly, saying, "My dear son, you have really done it. You have become a deity, you have become a deity by your own strength. I am proud of you." And Phorcys beside him couldn't help but praise and say, "Zagdelius, Ning or Daemon, who became a god like you, was the first. If it weren't for the wise priesthood being occupied by that damn Métis, I think you could definitely become the god of wisdom." Cato also agreed, "Yes, Phorcys is right. If it weren't for that Métis occupying your priesthood, you might be the god of wisdom now. After all, such a creation as yours has never been done before." Zagdelius said shyly, "Mother and father, please don't praise me so much. This will make me shy, and it will easily provoke the displeasure of His Highness." Phorcys said arrogantly, "What are you afraid of? As long as I am with Ketua, no one can hurt you. Even if we can't fight, we can also call our brothers and sisters to fight with him. If we can't, we can call our father, your grandfather, Puntos at the bottom of the sea pit. We should know that our father is one of the oldest gods and one of the most powerful beings under the 5 primitive gods. Who dares to call your attention?" Zagdelius shook his head and said, "I was just saying it, and His Highness Matthias' identity is not bad either." Cato clapped his hands and said, forget it, let's not talk about this matter for now. We're here to hold a banquet for you this time, after all, you've become a god. Then we need to let all the gods know that you've become a god." Phorcys asked, "By the way, Zagdelius, what is the use of your priesthood?" "I want to ask. Zagdelius felt for a moment and said, I am the god who controls pearls. I rule over the pearl clam race, and my divine power can condense pearls. What's the use of that pearl? Cato asked. Zagdelius pondered for a moment and said, the powder of pearls can make the skin of gods delicate and make them handsome. Upon hearing Zagishuan.com's words, Cato's eyes lit up and he said, my dear son Zagshuyuan.com, hurry up and bring some pearls to your mother. Upon hearing Cato's words, Zagdelius condensed 10 pearls with divine power and placed them in front of Cato. Seeing these pearls of different colors, Cato's eyes lit up and he said, these pearls are so beautiful. Wearing them on your body will definitely attract the attention of many gods. Cato held Zagdelius's small face and said, my dear Zagdelius, only a lovely deity like you can create such a useful priesthood. Pearls will definitely become the object of all goddesses' pursuit. Foucault felt the breath emanating from those pearls, which made his soul feel peaceful. His anger-filled emotions were also worn away a bit, so he couldn't help but ask, Zagdelius, can your pearls soothe the thoughts of the gods? I feel the breath of peace. Zagdelius said, yes, when my pearl was born, perhaps because it was at the bottom of the sea, it emitted a peaceful atmosphere. What's going on? Then I also want some pearls, because these pearls can soothe my soul, which is important for many gods. Tranquility can keep the gods' thoughts stable and allow them to think. This is really a highly supportive profession, said Foucault with a happy expression on his face. Cato continued, your priesthood is the most useful for goddesses, and it is also true for gods who aspire to fight. Perhaps you will truly become one of the most sought-after and powerful deities in the entire world of Chaos, captivating many goddesses and attracting many gods who master combat. Zagdelius said awkwardly, I just casually made it. Chapter 8. Taomas. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, by the way, this pearl exudes a peaceful atmosphere. We can give some to Brother Taomas, Cato suddenly remembered and casually said. Taomas. Zagdelius casually said. Cato thought that Zagdelius did not know who Taomas was, so he explained, Taomas is my brother, he holds the priesthood of ocean wonders, and all the strange sights of the ocean you see are within his grasp. Foucault continued with his words, Taomas is a gentle deity, but when his father fought against Taomas before, the aftermath accidentally affected Taomas, causing damage to his deity. Divine damage. Zagdelius said in silence. Divinity is the foundation of a deity. The gods may lose their feet, hands, head, or even minor adjustments, but they must never lose their divine character. Even a small scratch on the divine body feels like 1,000 cuts in pain. Phorcys looked at the pearl in his hand and said, since these pearls have the power to bring peace to the gods, I want to give Taomas some so that he can feel better. Seeing his painful expression on his face, we also feel sorry for him. Cato looked at the pearls in her hand with a worried expression on her face. She hesitated for a moment and said, Zagdelius, you should try your best to make small pearls first, and then give them to me when Brother Taomas' situation stabilizes. After that, Cato threw all the pearls to Phorcys, turning her head to one side, as if she wanted to have an invisible one, but her restless hand showed her mood. Zagdelius asked, Mother, how many pearls do you need to bring Uncle Taomas peace? Cato hesitated for a moment, shook his head, and said, I don't know either. After all, this pearl is also the first time we've seen it, and we don't know how many Taomas brother needs. Foucault also replied, usefulness is certain, but the effect is unknown, perhaps it may be many, many. Upon hearing Phorcys's words, Zagdelius came to the side of the pearl clam, injected divine power into its body, and then made every effort to signal it to produce pearls. The pearl clam obeyed the orders of its creator and immediately tried its best to conceive pearls. In no time, this pearl clam produced thousands of pearls. And Zagdelius's divine power was also exhausted, and his face turned pale. Cato saw the pale face of Zagdelius and looked at him with a heart-wrenching expression, saying, Why are you doing this? I don't know the effect yet. You don't need to do this, your divine power has been depleted. It will be very inconvenient for your future life. Seeing Zagdelius's pale face, Phorcus also flashed a hint of heartache, wanting to reprimand him. However, he realized that he was trying to help his family, and that his family had not yet met him, so he was pouring out his heart and lungs. The words of reprimand could not be uttered. In fact, for Zagdelius, it's just a bit of divine power. If it can leave a good impression on Taomas, it's also worth it. The exhaustion of divine power has no sequelae, it's just that one cannot use divine power to take things in life, and has no ability to fight back when encountering enemies. But don't forget his identity. He is a deity, and he is taken care of by someone. He is the primordial god, so as long as his mind is not sick, no deity will come to kill him. As for Warcraft, he has twin star god beads on his body, and no Warcraft will trouble him. So if nothing unexpected happens, then he won't actually be in any danger. Even if there is any danger that he can't resist, with his newly formed divine power, he can't resist it and is waiting to reopen. The literal meaning of this reopening is that he is the primordial god, whose greatest characteristic is immortality and immortality. He is a symbol of the laws of the world, and as long as there is the concept of pearls in the world, he will not die and will revive from the concept. There are few deities in this world that can make him reopen, and perhaps even none. After all, he has never heard of any deity that can strip other deities of their origins. If there were such a deity, this world would be in his bag, why target him as a small pearl god? Moreover, Taomas is the brother of his parents, not his brother, so if there is anything in the future, he may not be able to help. After all, you don't have what others want, so why does he help you? Therefore, this is also what Zagdelius wants to show his value to other gods. It can be considered as buying bones for $1,000. If you want to take it, you must give it first. Zagdelius still understands this principle. And he will also show his strong affection and righteousness in front of his parents. You should know that this is not uncommon in the world of chows, which shows his uniqueness. Just after the divine power of Zagdelius was exhausted, the pearl clam next to him seemed to have consumed all his mental energy. Its pitch black, ink-like shell also turned slightly pale, and its appearance with a hint of starlight disappeared. Seeing this seashell like this, Sea Danger hesitated for a moment and couldn't help but ask, "My child, this is a creature created. Can it create pearls on its own?" Zagdelius nodded and then said, "It consumes too much like me, that's why it's like this. In a few hundred years, it will be able to return to normal." 4 hundreds of years. Cato said, if pearls cannot be produced for hundreds of years, they should be restored to their original state. "A few hundred years cannot produce pearls," replied Zagdelius. Upon hearing Zagdelius's words, Cato hesitated a bit. Her gaze towards the pearl clam was filled with heartache. She had a way to cure the pearl clam, as long as she took out the trace of origin that her father, Pentos, gave her. Although this trace of origin cannot make the pearl clam divine, it is still more than enough to restore it, and even further progress can be made. The main reason is that this trace of origin was intended for Zagdelius, but now because Zagdelius has become a god, it has become a chicken rib. However, even a chicken rib is still a precious thing, after all, it is one of the oldest divine traces of origin. But this pearl clam can produce beautiful pearls, and they are also very fragrant. As for her son, he has created so many pearls that she will definitely not disturb him in the short term, so she can only rely on this pearl clam. Thinking of this, it was the goddess's desire for beauty that overcame reason. She gave this trace of origin to the pearl clam, and then the pearl clam began to transform. Its pale shell turned even whiter, but not the deathly white, but a white with a sparkling light that made people's eyes unable to move away. Chapter 9. Alice Phil, the Fairy of the Clam. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, then the pearl clam grew bigger and bigger. Originally, the diameter of this pearl clam was only about 1 meter. Although it became larger due to the divine power of Zagdelius, overall there was not much change. But under the influence of this trace of divine power, the radius of the pearl clam reached 3 meters, and the pure white shell was covered with fine patterns. Upon closer observation, those patterns resembled the patterns of waves and tides, emitting a sparkling blue light. After a while, a Ningfu emerged from this shell, with a hint of confusion on her face. But when he saw Zagdelius, his eyes lit up and he knelt down on one knee and said, "The great creator of the pearl clam, the master of the pearl, my eternal master, the fairy of the clam, Alice Phil, has come to pay her respects." And when Keto saw that the pearl clam had turned into Ningfu, he couldn't help but ask, "Alice Phil, can you still make pearls now?" Alice Phil looked respectfully at Keto, knowing that it was because of this powerful goddess that she was able to transform from a creation to Ningfu, with the possibility of becoming a god, of course, only a possibility. So she said, "The powerful goddess, the mother of the great pearl oyster creator, Alice Phil still has the ability to create pearls, but those pearls that contain the power of the Lord God can only be created once in 100 years. If we want more, we need the power of the Lord God to help. As for ordinary pearls, I can make many, many. Just one pearl in 100 years. Keto's face was full of disappointment. You have other ways to get more pearls. Alice Phil shook her head and said, "I'm sorry, Mother of the Great Creator, I can't do anything about it, but perhaps the Lord God has a way. After all, He is the creator of our race, and He knows us better than anything else." So Keto looked at Zagdelius, seeming to want good news from him, but to Keto's disappointment, Zagdelius shook his head. Zagdelius said, "I'm sorry, Mother. I really can't make so many pearls. If you want ordinary pearls, I don't even have divine power. As long as I think, the quantity of these pearls can be said to be endless." After speaking, many pearls emerged from the palm of Zagdelius's hand, but these pearls only looked a little more beautiful than ordinary stones. They did not have the beauty and amazement created by Zagdelius with his divine power, nor did they have the twinkling stars, nor did they have beauty or a peaceful atmosphere. Keto looked disappointed and said, "Okay, after all, this ordinary pearl is pretty enough, but it's just not what I want." Phorcys said to Alice, "You are now Ningfu. The pearls you produce must be sent to the palace of Zagdelius. To be honest, these pearls are also precious to the gods." Upon hearing Foucault's words, Alice immediately knelt down and said, "Your Highness, the great Foucault, I will always be the most loyal subordinate of the Lord Zagdelius. How dare I betray him? How dare I swallow this pearl privately?" Foucault's face changed for a moment, and his gaze towards Alice was also somewhat strange. She referred to CTO as the mother of the creator, and he was His Highness Foucault. However, it is also because of the trace of origin that Cato gave her that she was able to transform, and such a name is reasonable. Zagdelius saw Phorcys looking at Alice and said, "Alice, I believe in you. You are already my most loyal subordinate. When I have stronger power, I will bestow upon you the priesthood." Upon hearing Zagdelius's words, Alice Phil's face changed, her face filled with ecstasy. The expression on her face was almost uncontrollable, and she was so surprised that she couldn't help but ask, "Clergy?" Zagdelius nodded slightly and said, "Yes, I will grant you a priesthood so that you can become a god, and I can guarantee to grant you a priesthood within 10,000 years. Upon hearing Zagdelius's words, Alice was stunned by the pie in the sky and felt how lucky she was. She was originally a small black clam shell in the world, valued by Zagdelius, and became the world's first pearl clam. Later, she was bestowed with the origin by the danger of the sea, becoming a clam fairy. She was already satisfied, but just now she heard something that she could be granted a priesthood. This is a clergy. I don't know how many Ningfu pursued so hard that she couldn't even smell the scent of her priesthood until her death, and her main god said she could give it to her within 10,000 years. Is this because the goddess of luck looks at her differently? If there is a god who masters good luck, Alice Phil was so shocked that she couldn't speak. She looked at Zagdelius at Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com with a fanatical expression in her eyes. If there was a display of loyalty, her previous loyalty was 1, and now it is 10. Although Alice Phil would have died for Zagdelius before, she was always reluctant, but now even if she wanted to commit suicide, she wouldn't frown. Zagdelius nodded and said, "All right, don't be so shocked. It's just a priesthood. You just need to work hard and serve me well. There will be a priesthood, and you will become an eternal existence in the world of Chaos. All right, you go down first." Alice Phil's face was shocked, even numb to the point of numbness. Upon hearing Zagdelius's words, she instinctively left. When she arrived outside the palace, she was still in shock. Is there really such a generous deity in the world? She has never seen it before. All right, the servants have all left. Mother and father, can you tell me about my Uncle Taomas? Zagdelius's voice rang out. Upon hearing Zagdelius's words, Keto immediately replied, "Your Uncle Taomas had a good temper before, but his prolonged pain has made his temper very strange now. So be careful later." Zagdelius couldn't help but ask, "Is there no such deity?" "I feel like there are many such deities, right?" Phorcus looked at Zagdelius with a strange expression on his face. What was this kid thinking? Are you still being good after getting a discount? Are there many gods like this? No more than one hand, okay. And each one is a well-known existence. Although Phorcus felt a hint of pretense, he still explained, "The only deities with such power are His Highness Enix, Apollo's mother Leto, the sleeping god Hypnos, and the suspected Hestia. These are all difficult to match roles.